So I start by tracing the patterns that I downloaded and transferred to cardboard. Found that to be a little easier to work with than trying to work with the paper. They're templates I downloaded for my first bucket. I don't remember specifically where I got them, but there's a couple of places you can get them on the internet. And just transfer them to the aluminum. This particular sheet of aluminum is 14 gauge. The bucket that I'm making here is 14 and 16 gauge. The other bucket that I made, the other aluminum bucket, is 16 and 18. So we'll see what this one's like compared to the steel ones that I'm wearing. The steel bucket that I currently have for my kit is almost 7 pounds with the voice amp and fans. So I'm hoping that this one turns out significantly lighter. Once I've got the patterns traced out, I basically square up the lines. These are just kind of rough lines. In the end, I'll go back and probably change them depending on what the helmet shapes up as. So I basically just square them up and give me an idea of where to cut, and then make the triangle between the back of the cheeks and the front. So just an area to cut. Once I've got them traced out, I cut them. I use a DeWalt electric shear to make the rough cut. Not much of a picture here because this thing can be a little rough to use if you're not careful. Nice and safe. Once I've got them rough cut, I cut them with a Harbor Freight 4x6 bandsaw that I got for $10 on a local yard sale thing. And then basically just make the rough cuts in the front and back plates. Not much to it, really. You could cut these with shears as well, the same hand shears that I use to cut most of the other stuff. They're available in most hardware stores, big box stores. They're less than $20 or right around $20, depending on where you are. I just find the bandsaw to be quicker and easier to use, so that's what I use for this. Good majority of this build would be doable without any sort of expensive power tools with more time. I just chose to use the tools that I had at hand to save me time, particularly the shrinker stretcher, planishing wheel, and bead roller you'll see later on in the video. I just grab a random round object in the shop, this particular roll of butcher paper that I use for templating, and help me get me a general roundish shape to the front and back plates. In the end, they'll get a little more refining on shape, but this gets me in the neighborhood. Once I've got that started, I start on the actual form. This is a dome that I cut out from a similar template, and I use my shrinking stump and a 25-inch kid's t-ball bat that I cut off and turned into a hammer. I just find that the wood is a little easier to work with aluminum. Find it to be less damaging, and it does a pretty good job in the end. It may take me a little longer than if I had a ball peen hammer or a real shrinking hammer, but this is what I've got, and so it's what I use. I use a combination of a shrinker stretcher machine, a planishing hammer, and an English wheel to do the vast majority of the forming, in addition to the stump and the hammer, obviously. It is possible to do this without the shrinking stretching machine. I've seen it done. I've done it myself, but in my opinion, it takes longer. The planishing hammer could be replaced with a decent hammer and a nice solid surface, but basically it just helps take the dents out. And then once that's all done, the English wheel helps smooth it even further. None of these are high quality, expensive machines. Most of them are pieces that I picked up at Harbor Freight or Grizzly for less than $100 or right around $100. The English wheel in particular, it's a real small one, in my opinion. It's perfect for doing these little helmets and things like that because it's a small wheel that the dome fits inside it. It would never do for major body panels for a car or something like that, but for what I'm using it for, it works well. It needed a little tweaking to get it there, but it does okay. Once I get that done, basically I use a template, another wooden template, to just help make sure that the domes are appropriately sized and fitted, and then make trim marks for the left and right so that I can cut them and then join them together. I have not successfully been able to make the domes deep enough that I didn't have to weld a filler strip between the two pieces, the two halves of the dome, and the bottom halves yet. So basically what I'm doing here is just cutting off a strip. I think it was an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches maybe. What I'll do is I'll form that strip around the bottom of the domes, and then I will put it in the bead roller, and that will roll the brow piece. So I can then fit the front and back halves of the lower pieces inside the bead rolled piece, and you'll see that one a little later on. But once I've got this cut out and cut to size, I start welding. I'll weld the two halves together first, then I'll tack weld the extra filler piece in, put it on the bead roller, roll it out, and then go through and planish it, clean it up a little bit, fill all the welds, and then grind them all down. once I've got the vast majority of the welds ground down in the dome, I started on the cheek plates, both the inset pieces and the arches that go. And in my opinion, this is the hardest part of the helmet because these things are difficult to get fit just right. Basically, trace them out, cut them off with a bandsaw. Again, I'm using templates I downloaded online. Cut them off with a bandsaw, give a little bit of a bend to them in the corners, and then from there, it's just trial and error, fitting and fitting and fitting and fitting and fitting. Like I said, I think that this is the most difficult part of building the helmet. Usually takes me longer to do this than it does rough in the domes and stuff like that. Than just these two little pieces. I don't like them to be too deep in inset because then the helmet presses against my face. Once I've got them shaped roughly, I will tack weld them in place. I am the world's worst TIG welder. I have a machine. I have no idea how to use it. Fortunately enough, I'm an amazing grinder, so in the end, it doesn't matter. I can just mud dauber my way through the welding and then go through and grind them all down. Once I've got the cheek plates done and ground down, I cut the area for the T-visor, make a couple of channels that go on both sides that help hold the shield in place, weld those in, grind them down, and then I make a reinforcement strip that goes in the back along the bottom behind the face shield. You can't see it from the front of the helmet, but it actually helps strengthen it up a little bit. Once I've got those pieces done, I give the entire helmet a good sand, And then for now, it's done. I was waiting on some approval on some ideas that I have for changing my ear caps and potentially adding a blast shield and or rangefinder. And I think I'm going to change the keyhole slots in this helmet to integrate a better cooling system for a backpack. So I will finish that later, and there will be more videos on when I do. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.